Hey, what's up, fellas? Or whoever. So, I'm going to be using this as my backdrop here. Um, you know, that way you have a visual, so I'm not boring you with my ugly mug. And so, anyways, I went into the kind of cryptid side of the storyboard, and it was kind of fun for me to do that because and so the cryptid part of the storyboard, maybe I'll do a section of the storyboard that's called cryptid. And I'm talking about my experience with my childhood experience with my kitten, and how that carried with me up until my early 20s, when I had an encounter, so to speak, with I felt the presence of my dead kitten from my childhood kitten, which is like totally insane. And I went into kind of the ritualistic practice of sacrificing the kitten and everything, and in front of my eyes and all this stuff. And so the kitten's name was Shadow. I named the kitten Shadow, and it was a black kitten. And so I kind of want to do a super deep dive into that. So we're going to go way, way, way back. We're going to start way, way back when I was like 5 or so years old, and I first got the kitten. I lived in a little tiny town out in the middle of nowhere called Middleton, Idaho. And back then it was like our closest neighbor was, a few miles away in his farm country. My dad was a farmer. My grandpa was a farmer. And so I grew up, on the farm and shit, and growing potatoes and corn and all this stuff. And anyways, my dad had a couple of cats. One was named Tigger. The other was named Melanie. And Melanie, she only had 3 legs. She lost a leg because she was freezing. And so she was up in the engine of my dad's truck freezing. And then he came out in the morning and turned the truck on. And the fan, took off one of her legs or whatever. So she was 3-legged. And they had kittens. And so I remember when we found the kittens in the barn, and it was super crazy. And me and my brother's like 3 years older than me. We found the kittens, and so we convinced my dad. I don't remember my brother keeping a kitten. It was only me. I wanted to keep one of the kittens, and so my dad reluctantly let me have one of the kittens, and I chose the black one, and I named him Shadow. And and so my how I was saying how the female cat Melanie only had 3 legs, and it was because my dad was so it's in Idaho, so in the winters it's freezing, and stuff. And so I had the kitten, and it was only, within a couple months it was winter time, and we're talking 3-4 feet of snow on the ground, freezing weather. And my dad was forcing this kitten to have to stay outside. And then I would get in trouble, if I brought the kitten in. And so I was sneaking the kitten in at night to save it from the freezing cold and stuff. And then I would get in trouble, I would get fucking, I would get hit and beat and shit if I got caught sneaking the kitten in at night. And so then one night, I think I had snuck the kitten in. I had snuck Shadow in, and then I fell asleep, and I didn't know that my dad had put the kitten outside. So then I woke up in the morning, and me and my brother got ready for school, and we went out to wait for the school bus. And this is out in the country, mind you. The nearest neighbor is 3 miles away, kind of thing. And so we're out here waiting for the bus, and it's like 6 in the morning. And we see a bus coming. And this would happen often, where we'd see a bus coming and we weren't sure if it was ours, because sometimes it would be our bus and then sometimes it wouldn't, and it would just keep going. So we see this bus coming, and we're like wondering, anticipating that it's our bus, because it's fucking freezing outside and it's 6 in the morning or whatever. And so we're out there watching the bus, hoping it'll slow down. And then, it's not slowing down, and it keeps going. And right as soon as it passes me and my brother, the moment that it passes us, out of nowhere, my kitten Shadow just hurls out into the street right in front of us, and the bus just smashes it right in front of me and my brother's eyes. Like, it was literally like right in front of us. So we watched my kitten just like get smashed right in front of our eyes. It wasn't like several feet away from us, or several feet back, or several feet ahead. It was like directly, exactly right in front of us. And the bus just smashed and I didn't even know the kitten was outside. All of a sudden it was almost like it committed suicide. Like, it just leaped out right in front of me and my brother, right in front of that bus, and it just fucking smashed the kitten. And so, and I was like fucking like totally traumatized. Like, I had never seen nothing like that before. I had been fighting to keep my kitten alive while my dad just wanted it dead. And the interesting thing about that, in hindsight, many, many years later, looking back on that, see what the way my dad treated that kitten is the way my dad treated me. So my dad just, kicked me to the wolves, like, immediately. He was like, fuck you. Who cares? Which is exactly what he did to my kitten. So, it's like there's a mirror effect in all this. It's very, very strange. Sorry, I'm not keeping up with the visuals. Let me get back to the visuals here. Anyways, so fast forward, to the, it was probably like 95 or 96, I was homeless in Seattle. I'd been homeless for a few years at this point. So I had been, like just totally homeless, like fucking, I look like a fucking caveman, bro. I look like, I was living in the streets and sleeping in bushes and blah, blah, blah. I've been in and out of jail, like just in pure insanity going on for years already when I was in Seattle. And I was in a part of Seattle. I can't remember Fremont. It's called Fremont. It's like a subsection of Seattle. And it's probably about maybe 5 miles from downtown Seattle, or maybe more. It's probably 5-6 miles, something like that, from downtown Seattle. It's this little kind of small subsection of Seattle. And I was staying in that area because there's kind of a small river, from the bay, like the ocean. Seattle is on the on the west coast, and so there was some body of water that was connected to the ocean, and it was running through into this part of Fremont, and there was a bunch of wooded trees, like just on the outskirts of Fremont, and so I could stay there I could sleep in those trees and shit without getting harassed by cops and business owners and Karens and your security guards and your typical fucking craziness, insanity. And so that's why I stayed in Fremont. And then there was this coffee shop, up maybe a quarter of a mile from where I stayed in the sticks along this little river thing. And so I would go to this coffee shop every morning, and I would spare change up enough money to get a cup of coffee. And then I'd just hang out at that coffee shop, and I would just hang out there all day and journal. I was working on a journal, and so I really started getting into this journal where it was really consuming me, because I really started making some headway with this journal. Like I want to get some paper and kind of give you an explanation, but I don't seem to see any paper handy. Let's see. But anyways, so yeah, so so I'm like going to this coffee shop, and I start journaling because I don't have all this extra time. And so I started doing a journal, and then it really started picking up, where I was like, crazy shit was happening with this journal. Here, I've got a piece of paper here. I'll show you, because I want to kind of explain this. This is really, really crazy. Because I'm not I've always been into art and stuff, but I'm probably better than average when it comes to like drawing and things like this. I kind of have a knack for that stuff, but I'm not like some superhero artist or anything. You know what I mean? So, but hey, buddy. So, anyways, hi. This is my neighbor's dog. He's fucking hella cool. He's like poking his head in here. So I want to explain this. So let me kind of explain this journal. So I really started getting really heavy into this journal, and I'll explain why. The reason I was getting like so heavily into this journal is what happened is, well, here. So I started here. Let me go back to the visuals. So I started to do this journal, and how it started off is, well, of course, because I had all this time. And so what I started to focus the journal on to give me like a source for content, so to speak, is I started focusing on like crazy shit that had been happening to me in my life. And so I went back as far as I could, I started pulling back into early memory. And then I realized I had a lot to, I had a lot of material to work with. So one of the like really crazy things that happened to me when I was a child, I think I was like 7 or 8, is I choked on the pit of a peach. I was eating a peach, and the pit of the peach slipped down into my throat and got lodged into my throat. And I was by myself. So I didn't have anybody to help me, because the first thing I did was like, I couldn't talk and I couldn't breathe, and I was looking to see if there was anyone around. Of course, the first thing is hopefully somebody's around to help me, right? And there was nobody there. I was at my aunt's house, and there was nobody there. And this peach pit is lodged into my throat, and I cannot breathe, and I can't yell, I can't do nothing. And so once I had to accept that there was nobody there. I was powerless over this, that there was nobody there. I was alone in the kitchen, and everybody else was outside and doing whatever, this and that. And so I'm totally alone, and I'm choking on the pit of this peach, and I thought I was going to die, And so, your natural response, your body's natural response to that is going to be, to try to dislodge it using your lungs. And so I started just pushing with my lungs, and it it wouldn't come out. So it was kind of like the moment when a mother's child is trapped under a car, and the mother just like something takes her over and she's able to lift the car up. It was like a moment like that, where I just knew that I was either going to die or I was going to have to do something. And so I focused. I was a kid. My instinct completely took over. All my instincts took over, and so I just, with everything in me, I gave it one last try, and knowing that if I don't do this, this is my last chance, or I'm dead. and then the pit of the peach dislodged itself, from my instinctual kind of reaction. Finally dislodged the pit of the peach, and it was the scariest thing I'd ever experienced at that time. And so I'm doing this journal, right? And I'm thinking back, what are crazy shit that's happened to me in my past, and that one was one. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go with that. And so I decided I'm gonna do a journal an illustration journal, not where I write stuff down, but where I draw it. Okay, and so that's what I started with. Is I'm not doing a journal where I'm writing shit down. I'm gonna do a journal where I'm drawing it. Okay, and so that was the first piece, and I want to show you what I did. So what I did. So if this is the paper, what I did is I just did a quick sketch. Like in that thing where you just start writing and you just don't think about it. It's like, and you have 1 minute and you just start writing whatever down, and then you can go back and look at it, and you can like draw stuff from it, like from your subconscious, because your subconscious, well, it's the same idea, only drawing instead of writing. And so I just tried to draw a picture of myself choking on the pit of this peach. And so I'm like, I draw the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and I'm like, and trying to draw like, that I'm choking on how do you illustrate? However I could, just illustrate that I'm choking on the pit of this peach. And so I just kind of drew like something like that, right? So I drew that, and then, so then after I drew that, I just was kind of looking at it, right? And I was like, okay, and I started thinking of what's something else, because I was just going to start journaling, so I was going to, and I had, like I said, I had material to draw from, so I was like, okay, now what? And so then when I turned the page to start on the other page, I looked at this, and I saw the ink bleeding through on the other side, like you see there. And I started looking at it like, whoa, because I thought like I could see some imagery coming through, just kind of organically, like on its own coming through. And so then instead of going to draw the next thing, I started looking at that like, what the fuck? Because I was like seeing shit in it. And so then I'm like, what the? So I started really looking at it. And then I took a finer pen, and I just started going over the lines, and like really fine detail, just like wherever the line was bleeding, I just started going with it, and really what it was is like I was just letting the drawing draw itself. I just started really kind of going really fine, and as I saw different images, not even the images, like I saw something, and so I would just kind of start going along with it, and it didn't necessarily have anything to do with the drawing on this side. It was just that whatever was bleeding through, I just started really following whatever was bleeding through, and really kind of trying to draw out the lines that were bleeding through, without focusing so much on the drawing itself, right? And so I just started really kind of with using, fine lines and taking a lot of care. And I really started just, do you see what I'm saying? And then you can see like there's like weird images coming through, like right here, there's weird images like this starting to come through as I keep, just using a fine lines and really like trying to just go into really fine detail, and just allowing the images to take shape on their own. And I'm just kind of a medium, right? And so that's what I was doing. And then once I started doing this, it was like really coming together. Like, I mean, the imagery was just coming out, popping out of this page all on its own, and I was just kind of going, right? And so I just kept going and going and going and going. And like this kind of detail, it just started flourishing all throughout this entire fucking thing. And I worked on it and worked on it. So every morning I'm at the coffee shop and I'm just can keep working on this and going finer and finer into the details, because then, you know, you look at this. So you look at this and it's just like, you know, super simple. Then you look at this and there's more detail, but then you go even closer and you can see even more detail. So then you can start to even go finer and go finer and go more into it. So I'm doing this, okay? Let's go back to the imagery. So I'm doing this, and I just kept working on that, right? And I just kept plugging away, and I would work on it all day at the coffee shop. Every morning I'd show up, I'd get my coffee, I'd get my journal out, and I'd just keep going with it, because like the imagery just was growing and growing and becoming more and more fine and detailed, and it was like taking on a shape of its own. It was totally like just I was just the medium and allowing the imagery to come out on its own, using me as the medium. And so I'm at this coffee shop working on this, right? And I spent who knows how long. I don't even know, maybe a month. I don't know. It just kept going and going, because the more detail I would add to it, the more detail it would kind of show, like it just never ended. The more detail I put in, the more I saw I could add even more detail. So I'm just this journal page just is like totally popping off, and I'd never drawn anything like that in my life. Not before, and to this day, not since. And by the time I was done, dude, it was like that drawing would give Alex Gray a run for his fucking money, if you know who Alex Gray is. Like, this drawing, I mean, there was so much detail in this drawing. It had as much detail as a dollar bill. This thing, and then the form and shape that it took was the one big giant skull that was formed by a bunch of little tiny skulls. So it was one skull from a bunch of little tiny skulls formed this giant skull. And it was just like, what the fuck, right? So I and I didn't know I had that in me. You know, I didn't know that I could do that. I didn't know that was possible for me to do. And so by the time I finished and I looked at it, my mind was blown. I was just like totally blown away at how this could even be possible, that I could do this. And like I said, I've always been kind of good at drawing and art and music. I've always had a knack for this kind of stuff, but not on this level. Like, not on this level, okay? And I would always have a Walkman with me, and I would always listen to tapes and the radio, you know. And like when I would get sick of listening to whatever tapes I would turn it to the radio. And Tool, the band Tool, the album Enema was popular at that time. They were just dropping the new Enema songs and stuff, and they had like 2 or 3 Enema songs that were fairly regular on the radio at that time. And so, but I would just sit there and smoke cigarettes and drink coffee and work on my journal, work on this journal piece, and listen to music while I'm doing it. Okay? All right, so then I finish it, and it's like the best piece of art I've ever done. Like, I am just like, what the fuck? Like, this is gold, okay? So then I decide I'm going to do this again. So I'm going to keep working on this journal. And so then I go to the next page. After I'm done, I go to the next page. So I'm done with this. So then I turn the page over and I start another one. And I'm like, okay, what's something else that's like totally insane, right? And then I remember my kitten getting, killed in front of me. And so I was like, that's was really fucking crazy. Okay. So then I decide, okay, I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the last drawing. And so I draw a school bus. I draw a fucking school bus. Okay. I draw a school bus, and then I draw like a kitten that's totally splattered. I can't remember how it went, but it was, this with the guts everywhere, and like this, just something really simple. And I can't remember exactly. I don't remember exactly like I do this one. I knew on that one I just did a picture of me choking on the pit of a peach. But this other one, I know it was a school bus and the splattered kitten, and maybe me and my brother standing there or something like this. I don't remember exactly. Okay, but I did the same thing, and this time I intentionally wanted to draw the other side. So I turned the page. And then I'm like looking at the ink that's bleeding through. You can't see any ink bleeding through here really, because whatever. But anyways, and then I just start working on this. I start like really doing all this and working on all this detail, doing a fine, like just following the ink that's bleeding through on the page and all this shit, right? And but this time, instead of it being like all this crazy detail and stuff, this one didn't work out like that. And what kept happening and what kept surfacing was more just basic shapes, simple shapes. Whereas this drawing, it was like all complex. It was all this complexity. No matter what I did to try to do the same thing with this, it just kept popping up reoccurring simple shapes, and it wasn't taking form. The only thing that was taking form was a shape. And the crazy thing is the shape that kept showing up over and over again without me even trying to was the shape looked like this. Almost like a Batman symbol. It just kept showing up. And no matter how I tried to, and then when there's a shape like that, you can't really add much detail to it. And so I'm trying, and then there's like more than one though, like another one shows up, and just by kind of following the lines, and then I keep seeing this same shape, just kind of like showing up, and it was really frustrating because I was trying to do the same thing as I did on this drawing, and it was really speaking to me. Like when I was doing this one, it was almost like the pen and the paper were speaking to me, and so when I'm doing this one, I'm not getting that same communication. Like it stopped speaking to me, but the only thing that kept showing up was this simple, just this, instead of a complex conversation I'm having with the pen and paper, it stopped talking to me, and it would only, this simple shit kept showing, but it was always this kind of shape that kept showing up, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get it to work, and so anyways, but I keep working on this anyways, right? I just keep working on this. And so every day I'm at the coffee shop and I'm working on it as much as I did the last drawing, but it's just not getting anywhere, and the shape keeps popping up. And I'm starting to wonder what's going on with this shape, okay? So now, during this time, there was this girl, and she was like an attractive girl, and mind you, I am like a caveman homeless guy. Like I'm totally tore back. I'm wearing fucking same clothes for months or whatever, going without showering for long periods of time. Like, just totally tore back. Like when I would walk around, people knew I was homeless. Like it was obvious I was homeless. It was like that kind of situation, like third world poverty, you know, in a rich, uppity, you know, city of Seattle. And I am experiencing third world poverty. So I stuck out like a sore thumb, right? So anyways, this girl came by at the coffee shop while I'm working on my journal, and she's for some reason she took an interest in me, which was weird because she was attractive. She was around my age and she was attractive. And I kind of figured she's just feeling sorry for me. So it was real awkward for me. It was really weird for me. Like, but I didn't mind the company because people normally wouldn't talk to me, you know. And so she came by a couple of times and she asked to sit down, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And then we would talk and shit a little bit or whatever. But I was like, by that time I was very antisocial because I'd been lots of shell shock from years of living on the street already. Like I had learned what people truly are. So I'm not very talkative. And so she's like trying to get me to open up a little bit or whatever, and by being friendly, right? And then she's telling me that she works at this bakery up the street and that, you know, she'll bring me some pastries and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you know, whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm really despondent and kind of flat affect because I just don't trust people, and I'm trying to be nice to her. But it's really weird and awkward, and it's like, why would this attractive girl want to talk to me? I'm a piece of shit or whatever. So anyways, then she come by again a few days later or whatever. I'm there working on the journal, and she brought pastries and stuff. And then she'd talk to me and stuff, and it was the same awkward kind of like, you know, but I was grateful for the pastries, and, you know, and like, it's nice talking to a pretty girl, but not when you're totally disheveled and tore back and haven't showered for a month or whatever. So it was just like one of them kind of situations, if you could imagine, right? So anyway, so this is going on while I'm working on this journal. And then one night I'm at the coffee shop and I'm still plugging away, trying to figure out what is going on with this page and why are these weird symbols keep showing up. And it was interesting to me that they were like in the shape of a cat's head. But outside of that, it was just like, I want to get, you know, some good fucking detailed art, and it's not happening with this, right? And so then the coffee shop closes, and so I do my same old routine. I gather all my belongings, and then I sling my backpack over my back, and I start heading back to camp in the sticks, right? And so I do the same thing I always do, gather up all my gear, sling it on my back, put my headphones on, turn on the whatever, and then start walking back to camp. So I do that, and I'm walking down the street, I get my headphones on, and then I turn on the radio. And as soon as I turn on the radio, the song 46 and 2 is playing. But I had never heard the Tool song 46 and 2 before. I had never heard it in my life. And it was, you know, newly playing on the radio. Like they hadn't played that Tool song ever. I listened to the radio a lot, and I didn't even recognize that it was Tool because it sounds so different than your typical Tool songs. So but when I turn on the radio, the first thing that is blaring in the speakers is the chorus to the song, which is my shadow, change is coming through my shadow, shedding skin, I've been picking my scabs again. And again, you have to listen to the song 46 and 2 to understand like the impact that had on me in the moment, because, you know, the page is already speaking to me. I drew that thing, and like I see all this shit coming through the paper using the pen, and so I'm trying to do the same thing with this experience I had with my kitten on paper using pen, and it's not happening. All I'm seeing is these symbols that look like, you know, like a crude shape of a cat or a kitten's head or face. And which is strange, but I wanted to get I wanted it to like really pop and be like this crazy piece like the last one was. And then I put the headphones on as I'm walking away, and as soon as I turn on the radio, it's screaming bloody murder. It's screaming, my shadow, change is coming through my shadow, my shadow. And so I was like totally tripping the fuck out, dude. I was like, what in the fuck? You understand, like I've been working on the shadow thing all day, my kitten shadow drawing, and then the coffee shop closes up. I grab my shit, throw my earphones on, start walking, turn on the thing, and it starts blaring, my shadow, my shadow. And so I am just like, whoa, bro. It's like I'm having a fucking major acid trip all of a sudden out of nowhere. And so I am like, what? And the song is super badass. Like the song 46 and 2 by Tool is arguably their best song ever. It's one of their best songs, arguably their best song. And so I'm walking down the street, freaking the fuck out, like I'm having a massive fucking LSD fucking flashback and shit. And I'm listening, trying to figure out what is going on with this song. What is it saying? Who is this band? Why is this happening? You know, this is not. I guess I've always kind of been. I've always kind of been suspicious about coincidence. Like I guess I don't really believe in coincidence. So when that happened, I was like, this is not a coincidence. And so I'm listening to it, trying to decode, you know, this cryptic message. It's like this cryptic message is blaring through the earphones right into my ears, and I'm like desperately wanting to decipher what the meaning of all this is. So I'm walking down the street, blasting this into my head, tripping out like I'm on fucking some window pane of the 60s, and I start walking across the street, and then there's that girl, and she's like walking towards me, and I'm like, fuck, because it was like a crossroads. It was either I was going to take the earphones off and talk to her, or I was going to keep the earphones on and keep walking. And I was way more interested in this cryptic message that was blasting into my ears about my shadow than I was talking to this pretty girl. But I was like at a crossroad. What am I going to do? And so as we're walking towards each other, and she's looking at me and stuff, and so I'm walking, and I decide, you know, right as I get up to her, that I'm not even going to stop and talk to her. So I just pulled the headphone off of one of my ears, and I just tell her I gotta go, you know, and then I just keep walking, like briskly walking, and I didn't even look back, you know, and I just kept walking and kind of left her standing there, and listening to this song, right. And then the song ended, and I didn't know who the band was. That's how really obscure this Tool song is. It doesn't fit your typical format of a Tool song, you know, even though it sounds like Tool, but it doesn't, and it's hard to tell, right? And so then I go to sleep thinking about this. I wake up the next morning, I'm still thinking about it. And it's like bothering me. It won't leave me alone. Okay. So I have one of the routines I had is I would walk to downtown Seattle from Fremont, which is like 5-6 miles away. And I did that regularly. More and more regularly and so I decided I'm going to walk downtown. And I'm going to go to the 5 Point Cafe, which there's a lot of interesting history regarding the 5 Point Cafe. And there's only like 5 of them in the U.S. or something, and you know, there's ley line conspiracy theories about the 5 Point Cafes and shit. And the one in Seattle is very unique. It's very unique. It's got this big giant like brass sculpture of the Indian Seattle. His name is Seattle, or no, yeah, Seattle. And it has a bear under his feet, and the bear has water coming out of its mouth, and it's like a fountain. There's all kinds of, like, it's a very unique coffee shop, and it's a very unique area of Seattle, or it was at that time. So I walk miles and miles, you know, I walk like 5 miles or whatever to the 5 Point Cafe, and spare change to get, so I can go in the 5 Point and get a coffee. And one of the things about the 5 Point is you can smoke cigarettes in the 5 Point and drink coffee. And one side of the 5 Point is like the coffee bar, and the other side of the 5 Point cafe is the regular bar that serves alcohol. So I go into the 5 Point and I get a coffee, and I'm smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. And I'm thinking about, and I can't stop thinking about this song, My Shadow, right? And I'm thinking, is that Tool? And then I realized that the jukebox at the 5 Point Cafe has the album Enema. Okay, now the Tool's album Enema was still recent. So it was kind of unique that the jukebox had this album on the jukebox because it's such a new album. And so I go over to the jukebox and I'm like, I think that this album is in here if I remember right. And I go over there and I look, and sure enough, they have this Tool album Enema. And the radio has only played like 3 of the songs, and I don't have the album, and I haven't heard the album. And so I'm looking at the song list on this Tool album, wondering if this song, My Shadow song, is on this album, if this is Tool and it's on this album. And so I'm looking at the song playlist, and I'm wondering, like, if it is a Tool song and it is on this album, I wonder which song it might be. And so I'm reading through the songs, and one of them stood out among the others because it was numbers, not words. All the other titles of the songs were words. This one song the title had numbers in it, and the numbers were 46 plus 2. And that was the name of the song, was like the number 46 plus the number 2. And I kept looking at that, and I was like, that's weird. Like that song was like really standing out from the others. And then I still had a little bit of change left, and I had enough to where I could play a couple songs on the jukebox. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to see. Just out of curiosity, I wonder what this song is. Maybe, could it be? I don't know. I didn't even know if the band was Tool. When I heard the song the night before, I didn't even know if it was Tool because it was so different. So I put the change in the jukebox, and then I just pushed that song to play it. And then I go and I sit back down where my coffee is, and I just go back to my thing, not really thinking, just like whatever. I don't really expect anything. And then when the jukebox gets to my song, then it starts playing, and like at first the way the song starts off, it's like, is this the song? And then it keeps going and building to the point where then I realize this is the fucking song. So then there's the song, and it's like blaring, and so then it just brings me back to the night before, and then that itch in my brain, it just injects this whole thing into my brain again, where I'm like, fucking, what the fuck is this? What is fucking going on? So I'm like really fucking tripping out now. I'm like, okay, something is going on. This is not coincidence. I know this cannot be coincidence. And anyways, so this was in 95 or 96, okay? And so this is a while ago, but I just remember getting totally obsessed. Like, I knew that something was trying to communicate to me. This is totally way outside the mundane, normal bullshit that this is something far outside of that. Like the veil, it's outside the veil of what we know to be. And so I'm trying to follow it. So it's like these clues. It's like the first night it was a clue. It presented itself as like a clue. Like, what is this? So I start following the breadcrumbs, trying to see if there is something to this. And it leads me to the 5-Point Cafe, to the jukebox, and then I start following the clues at the jukebox just out of curiosity. Well, once I follow the clues at the jukebox, then it's like boom in my face, where I'm like, okay, no, this is not coincidence. This is more than a gut feeling. Like there is something going on. So I start trying to follow the clues, and so then these kind of coincidences start happening for like the next 4 or 5 days, and it just wouldn't stop. And then the more it happens, the more I start seeking, like, okay, I need to stay on the case here. This is definitely like something is calling to me. Is this my kitten trying to communicate to me from the dead or something? Like, it was really insane. And so then I started dedicating my time and my days to trying to figure this out. And so I go back to the journal and I start trying to journal it some more, and all that's showing up is these same symbols. Nothing is coming through but those symbols, but they look like they're in the shape of a cat's head. And I'm just like, what in the fuck? And then I'm thinking about that girl, because that girl was telling me, that I could come by the bakery, that she works at this bakery. And I remember that I ran into her that night, and that I just like didn't stop and talk to her because the song was playing. So I decided I'm going to go over to this bakery, because it was right down the street, and I had never gone to the bakery, even though she offered me to. So I go over to the bakery, and it's a few blocks down the street. And because I'm following the case, I'm trying to follow the clues on all this that keep popping up throughout the next following 3 or 4 days, like just in my face nonstop. So I decide to follow. Maybe this is a clue, that she's part of this clue, one of the clues. And so I go to this bakery, and I go inside, and I ask for her, and she's not there. And I'm like, okay. And at this point, I'm getting really tired, because I've been walking miles and really working, trying to understand why this is happening to me and what is going on, because this is obviously not coincidence, right? But I'm getting tired, like it's just draining me, and it's taking up, I'm getting obsessed, and it's just taking up everything. And so when I step outside the bakery, I'm like, dude, I just can't keep doing this, because I'm just getting teased with these clues, and they leads me to more clues, but there is no closure to this. It's just one thing after another, and I'm getting tired of following these clues, and I'm not getting closure, and it's draining me physically and mentally and spiritually. So I look across the street, and there's just some place, and I've got a little bit of money, and there's tables outside. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to go there and get something to drink and just sit down and I don't know. So I go across the street, I get a drink, I sit down at the table across the street from the bakery, and I'm just trying to quiet my mind. And I'm telling myself, I'm going crazy. Like, you're going crazy, dude. Like, this is all just coincidence. You need to let this go. I'm trying to reason with myself, like, dude, you have to let this go. It's just coincidence. It can't be anything outside of coincidence. And so I'm calming my mind, and I'm just sitting there, and I get my mind into a state of calm to where I'm just not thinking about anything, where I'm clearing this from my mind, because I'm tired. I have to stop, right? And so I'm sitting there at the table, and I get my state of mind to where it's clear, and I'm just kind of staring off into space, which was my goal, is I just need to clear this from my mind. And so I've got it cleared from my mind, and I'm just staring off into nothing. My eyes aren't focused on anything. I'm just looking, right? And I'm in a state of meditation, just kind of looking off into nothing and focusing on clearing my mind. And so I get to where I feel like my mind is clear, and I'm like, okay. And so then I just kind of focus my eyes on whatever my eyes were looking at, to see like the detail, to like, what am I looking at out of curiosity. And so when I focus my eyes to what I'm looking at, once I quiet my mind from all this, I'm looking at the building across the street, which is that bakery, and I'm looking at the address. My eyes are on the address. but I didn't focus my eyes. So when I focus my eyes are fixated on the address of the building across the street, which was the bakery, which was that girl that worked at that bakery. And my eyes are fixated on the address. And so when I focus my eyes and I see the address, guess what the numbers are? The number of the address of that building, that bakery, which all these clues led me to that bakery. The number of the address of that building that I was looking at was 462. The name of the song is 46 and 2. The address was 462. And so it was like all that effort I put into clearing my mind and quieting my mind to stop this madness of my shadow and all this shit. As soon as I focused my eyes, the bakery of the building the girl worked at, that I was looking at, the address, the number of the address was 462. And the name of the song is 46 and 2. And I'm just like, oh my God, here we go again. And then these coincidences just kept happening. They would not fucking stop. And so I just had to come to terms with, this is a part of my reality, you know. And it's haunted me ever since. Like, that has haunted me ever since, because something real was happening with that, and I could never understand it. The only most logical conclusion I could come to was that my kitten was communicating to me from the grave, like 16, 17 years later, out of nowhere. And I started thinking maybe it was like a guardian angel, like my kitten was trying to communicate to me to comfort me because I had been alone living on the streets. And going back to, you look at what my dad did to my kitten, well, that's what my dad and my mom did to me. And so, that my dad just like kicked the kitten out, wouldn't let it come inside. It's like freezing winter, and my kitten just killed itself right in front of my eyes as a result of my dad, doing that. And then what does my dad do to me and my mom both? They do the exact identical thing to me that they did to my kitten back when I was 5 years old. And now I'm on the street. After being on the street for 3 years, I get this crazy fucking experience where I'm being visited all day by what appears to be none other than my dead kitten from 17 years ago, communicating to me from the grave. And so that has haunted me ever since. And so sometimes I talk about it because sometimes I reflect on it. And the first time that I realized that this was a thing, okay, so years later, I'd been sober, clean and sober, and a member of AA for like a year or something, right? And I'm visiting my mom and her boyfriend. And they're watching the History Channel, and it's like Halloween. It was around Halloween, and so the History Channel is doing a thing about ghosts and spirits and stuff. And so we're just sitting there watching it, whatever. Never been into TV, but I'm just there, going through the motions of being with my family, part of sobriety and all this shit. And so at a commercial, because my mom's boyfriend, he's all into it and watching it. So at a commercial, he looks at me and asks me if I've ever felt the presence, because that's what the History Channel is like, going into stories where people had felt presences like ghosts and seen signs and felt the presence and seen the things of a ghost. And so during a commercial, he looked at me, he's like, have you ever felt the presence? And I wasn't even paying attention to the program. And I'm like, what? And he goes, have you ever felt like a ghost presence or anything? And he was just saying it kind of sarcastically, joking around, because he's like a skeptic. He doesn't. And so I just started laughing. I'm like, no, I can't say I have, And then right as I said that whole incident flashed before my eyes with this my shadow, and my kitten, and that whole experience. And like a minute went by, and all that whole thing, that memory just came to the surface. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh, holy shit, right? So then I looked at him and I said, you know what? I have felt the presence of like of something from another world communicate. And that was when I realized I actually have, dude. I have. And then, you know, I started as part of my sobriety and recovery, I started exploring different spiritual beliefs, because part of the sobriety and recovery has to do with, you know, getting in touch with spirituality. And no matter what, it's up to the person if they want to get into religion or spiritual, but something. It suggests that you start looking into the spiritual thing and blah, blah, blah as part of sobriety and recovery. So I start doing that, you know, as time goes on, months and years. And then I come across like shamanism and spirit animals and shit. And when I start looking into that, shamanism, like shamans, it's a regular occurrence that shamans communicate with animals, like dead animals, like spirits of animals. And then the spirit animal, like everybody has a spirit animal and all this stuff. And I start realizing how much truth there is to shamanism and like communicating with the spirits of dead of animals and shit. Like, this is all real. Like, this is not whereas before I just looked at it as woo-woo bullshit. It's like, no, I've experienced this. Like, what the fuck? So anyways, so this has kind of always haunted me. Just been in the back of my mind, haunting me. And that's how it relates to the storyboard. Is then, you know, then it goes into the storyboard. So that's why I talk about that aspect of Todd Minshall's death. And then it's just coincidence, the very day, and I would imagine probably close to the hour that Todd Minshall died is when I came across that crystal. I want to show you that crystal because that crystal was the same symbol. Okay, this is why that crystal fucked my head up. That crystal is exactly the same symbol as that. And that's why that crystal would not leave me alone. It was shaped like that. It was a smoky quartz crystal, is about the size of my fist. And I knew that that fucking crystal was calling to me. Like, this shit is continuing to haunt me. That's what this is all about, is this is not going away. And then, so it's just coincidence that once I got that crystal in my hand, that was the same date that Todd Minshall died. And then that was when all of this, the seed of all of this began to sprout. And, you know, the whole thing with her being involved in his death, and the other witches that were all involved in his death, all the connections to him, them being tied to his death. So this is like the kind of cryptid aspect of the storyboard is super complex and interwoven all throughout the practical aspect of the storyboard, the story, all the practical stuff where I'm talking about arson, murder investigations, death threats, all this other. There's a whole metaphysical, cryptid aspect of that's interwoven all throughout the whole story. As if the story itself isn't unbelievable enough, then you have all this supernatural phenomena interwoven and intertwining all throughout the story of the storyboard. So there you have it.